are we able to stop aging? And I guess, so this is a good question. What does aging really mean?
I don't think we can stop aging, but I think we can adapt some habits that would slow down the physical aging while increasing the mental aging, because aging mentally doesn't depend on time, it depends on experience. So you could exponentially increase.
At IMI, we're developing a wearable device that continuously monitors thyroid hormones. Patients.
Welcome to the Biotech Talks, or whatever the name of this podcast will become. Today I'll be moderating. Our best moderator in the world, Ali Dabez, is feeling a little sick today, a little under the weather. So yeah, I'm going to take charge today. We'll see how it goes. But the topic is aging. What is aging? Right. Ali, I see you got a lab coat on, dude. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm in the lab. I was running a few experiments because I didn't get to do that during the week. We had a busy week working on a few different things for IMI, for school, and other activities on campus. So I just decided to use my Saturday to run a few experiments before next week starts and planning everything. Yeah, I was using the 3D bioprinter to try to print 10% weight concentration, 10% concentration of gelma. Gelma is basically gelatin methyl acrylate that's used a lot as a biomaterial. That could be used as scaffold, that could be cell seeded, and then it could basically host cells where we can see how long the cells can live in those cultures. To at some point we're hoping to have a full structure that would hold cells and would live. So basically that's our path to artificial organs, where you can print a heart or print a liver. In our lab we mainly work with liver cells. Yeah, that's the focus.
And that's like organ on chip stuff, right? Really?
Kind of.
So that researchers can do research regarding the function of the liver better than doing it in culture, right? Like on a monolayer plate.
Yeah, so we could really use the scaffold and stuff that we create in so many different ways. We can use bioreactors and biochambers. There's many in macro biochambers that we could put the tissue. It basically becomes a tissue after you print it and you put the cells in it and all that stuff, and it's functioning. Then you can run it for pharmaceuticals rather than testing on actual organs. We can actually now test on 3D printed tissue.
Yeah.
So that's one of the uses. But I mean, at some point we can use it as patches that could be implanted on the actual liver. So let's say you have a damaged part of your liver, we can basically put a patch on it that's 3D bioprinted, and that holds the cells, and they could kind of merge and becomes like if it's part of the liver or the organ itself. Another use, which is that's probably in the next 25-30 years, is actual organ fully printed, which is at this point with this technologies that we have, I think it's kind of impossible, but I mean, it's possible with the newer techniques and methods, materials that we can come up with, the labs come up with. It could be become possible.
Yeah, you'd really have to design a better scaffolding system that also integrates into and biodegrades with the evolution or the growth of the organ, right? So it would be disintegrating at the same time as the organ's growing, so that then because you have gravity and everything else, so
mainly the two things that 3D bioprinting focuses on is cell viability, making sure that you can keep the cells alive, and
Mhm.
structure. You
Right.
can maintain, you can have that scaffold, that tissue, maintain its structure within the body and not dissolve. And I mean, yeah, we've seen researchers that were able to print tissue and culture, seed it with heart cells, and the tissue start beating. I mean, that was cool. Like, you can have in a culture plate, and your tissue that you just 3D bioprinted will start beating.
Right. Yeah.
But
I seen stuff with neurons too, which is pretty cool. But all right.
yeah,
So Cameron, how are we doing today? How are you?
I'm
You
doing-
looking good? You looking like you're freshly shaved or trimmed, I should say. Did you get a trim recently?
I did. I trimmed myself. It was
Very
incredible.
nice. Was that this morning?
Yeah,
You're looking as clean as a baby's butt, my man.
yeah, he looks different than
that's
last
what I was
night.
going for, baby.
You look at those cheeks, man. Nice and rosy. Beautiful. How we
Baby
doing today?
bottom. Feeling good. Feeling good. I had a good little mental flush day today. Didn't look at any screens. Went to the beach.
Oh,
Had a
you
good
lucky,
time.
you lucky
I
dog.
saw some
It's-
dolphins. It was nice.
Oh
Whoa.
damn.
Yeah, it's 20 degrees up here. So I'm a little jealous.
What are you talking about? 20 degrees. We're
I wish I
like,
could go to the beach. You look
Oh,
like you caught a
actually, we are
a little sun. Yeah.
I did catch
Well,
I did catch a few rays. I definitely
Very nice. Very nice, gentlemen.
it warmed
so-
up.
What?
I thought it was a lot colder than 20 degrees. I mean, last night was like 4.
I know. It really did. Cause I was like, it was really cold yesterday, but then I walked today, when I went to the gym, and yeah, it was nice. It was sunny, it was, they were finishing up building the ice sculptures, down
Yeah,
in,
those are cool.
down in college or whatever.
Are we on the third episode right now? Okay.
Number
Yes.
3. Yeah. Number
Okay,
3.
so I'm gonna say third episode, aging.
Are you going to take
What
notes?
is aging?
Minutes
Yeah.
meeting minutes. I mean,
All right. The minute man for the podcast.
Minute
All
man.
right.
Well, yeah, just because, in case I get a word in edgewise, I can write my notes down. So don't forget.
Yeah, I'm going to focus on you, Cameron, today. We each have to have an equal duration of speaking time, right? And we can now
Oh,
determine
boy.
that based on some analytics done,
Ugh.
there you go. Yeah, we had a difficult week with IMI, it's been we've been busting it out to get some things done. So we're all functioning about
Oh,
one
we've been chewing some glass. I still have the
Right.
taste of blood in my mouth from last night, but it's good. It's a good taste. It's
Right,
an acquired taste.
when you're a shark, blood is what you need.
sniff.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, they say
Yeah.
like a startup is like a shark. If it stops swimming, it dies, right? So I consider us sharks.
Oh,
I am
yeah.
a shark, and it needs blood, right?
I-
That's-
We've
I
been
always-
swimming. We've been doing some good progress.
yeah.
Last few
Sometimes it
weeks.
feels
Yeah.
up current, but upstream.
is.
Yeah. You're swimming in ponds. We're swimming in the ocean, baby. We are
I
the
don't know what
ocean.
that means. What are you talking
This-
about?
It's fine.
Everyone else is a shark in a small pond, but I'm tired.
It's fine. English is his second language.
Just understand what I'm trying to transmit.
This should be interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
cognitively
You're telling
to
all
you.
our viewers that they're little fish in little ponds, and we're
No, I'm saying our competitors.
Ah,
The pond is a metaphor for your idea bubble. Like,
nice.
we have a whole suite of sensors, but not only that, just like in the future, the things that we want to do, and it's an ocean worth of information. So we're sharks swimming in a big pool of water when you guys are just, we're gonna leave you behind in the pond
Well,
with the little fish.
Beautiful.
Since-
That was well said, Cameron.
well said. Well, Cameron,
Yeah, you
I
like
ha-
that?
I have a
Yeah.
quote. I have a quote to summarize what you mean. So it says, a legendary hero is usually the founder of something, the founder of a new age, the founder of a new religion, the founder of a new city, the founder of a new way of life. In order to found something new, one has to leave the old and go on a quest of the seed idea, a germinal idea, that will have the potential of bringing forth that new thing by Joseph Campbell, The Hero with 1,000 Faces.
Great
So,
book.
It's a very great book. Basically, startups, people who decide to build a startup or find a new thing, you have to leave the old and go on a quest of the seed idea, and you have to be that shark that never stops swimming till you find that thing that you're trying to build. I don't know. I feel like that quote was summary of what Cameron said.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I was thinking too, like, in terms of what you're saying, we have all these low-hanging fruit, or these, we're picking fruit from an orchard, right? And the past 100 years with the breakthroughs in physics and then led into computer science, right? We're in this orchard of physical technologies that we've been picking these fruit, and they're been running dry, right? So like the ones that revolutionize go out and find new fields, right? That they can find more new low-hanging fruit, right? A whole new orchard. And that's what I think, honestly, a lot of biotech stuff and health tech, right? And it's going to change the game for healthcare, because we're creating new technologies that allow us to pick the low-hanging fruit of new orchards, right? Especially when it comes to data analytics and what we're going to be able to acquisition. So
we'll have so much access to things that we've never accessed before, so many information, data, that like it's going to be an ocean worth of data where just have so much to explore and so much to go off of and build technologies off of. And
right.
we might realize our whole system might be just wrong because we were working with the little data that we had. But now with all this technologies, we have an opportunity there.
Yeah, exactly. The future is exciting. All right. So should we talk about aging now? What do you guys think? We ready to kind of dive into whatever the heck aging is?
It's all you, yeah.
All right. So I was kind of looking across a couple little platforms, right? Like Wikipedia, says aging is the process of becoming older, right? Animals, humans, fungi all undergo this act of aging and then recycling of material. But I wanted to kind of like, there's a couple interesting things I've been kind of accumulating, and I don't want to talk too much because I'm supposed to be moderating. So I wanted to pick your brains, like what your perspective of aging is, and how can you combat it, right? Like what do you think of aging? So Karen, I'll start with you. When you hear aging and when you're asked the question, what is aging? What comes to mind? What do you think about?
So it's funny that you brought up the definition, because I looked it up today, and it's almost a little ironic to me because it says the process of growing old. And I thought about that, and there's a distinction, I think, between aging and growing. And when I thought about aging not only physically, your outer shell of your body. You and I, we can see the physical differences, but I also thought about aging internally and growing and maturing. And I was like, I think it's possible to age while not growing. Because if I sit here and I don't do anything and I remain stagnant and I remain in my comfort zone, all I've done is age. I haven't grown. So to me, aging is in the process of growing old. I think aging may be just getting older. Now, there's a lot of benefits that happen just in aging itself, and we can unpack that, but I'll turn it over to Ali, and we can kind of bounce ideas back and forth.
Yeah. When you sent out the chat that we're going to be talking about aging, I started thinking about it, and it's kind of similar to what Cameron mentioned, is the idea of aging. You could be growing old or like getting older in number of years or in the physical body, but it also at the same time, you need that growth, the mental growth, the mental aging, and the wisdom, the information, and the things that you get exposed to with time. When you get older, you have just so much knowledge. Life, your perspective on life is way different. So aging, as in a spiritual and mental way, like in your brain, it is different than physical aging. Because you could
Yeah.
go, you could be and really the thing is that I have experienced is, which is what Cameron mentioned, is being stagnant. You can like the amount of time or years is gonna pass no matter what. You have no control over that. But if you remain stagnant, you're just passing by years, by your knowledge and everything else, you're not growing. You're on the same level as you were 5 or 10 years ago because you remain stagnant. However, you could have somebody who's only 20 years old and traveled the world, been to so many places, experienced so many things. Mentally, this person could be a lot older and has so many different perspectives on life than that one person who's 40 years old and never left their environment since he went to school, he went to college, he went to and stayed in the same area he lived in. It could be hard to understand and have wisdom that's different than the culture they grew up in because of the amount of information and stuff that they were exposed to. So it comes
Yeah.
down like when you want to look at aging, are you looking at physical aging? Because we get tired as human, that's part of it. You know, our organs stop functioning properly as they were. It depends on our habits. It depends on if you were when you were younger, what kind of habits you adapted, whether going to the gym or not, or like stuff like that. This
Mhm.
could affect the physical aging, but the mental
Yeah.
aging, the books that you read, the things that
Yeah.
you experience.
It's almost ironic because as your mental age increases, your physical age almost tends to decrease because the more we know, the more we understand and know about health. And so I guess in my case, I'm equating or I'm associating gaining more knowledge with a higher mental age. And if I know more, then I can do more about not aging, because I guess the whole point of I guess what we're doing is, like, so to speak, stop aging. But there's different, you've unpacked a lot for me to think about. There's different definitions of aging. You said there's a mental age, and I always thought, okay, well, I might be in a 20-year-old body, but I might have a 50-year-old mental age. What does that mean? I now have 30 more years of knowledge crammed into a 20-year-old physical body. So it just got me thinking, are we able to stop aging? And I guess, so this is a good question. What does aging really mean?
I don't think we can stop aging, but I think we can adapt some habits that would slow down the physical aging while increasing the mental aging, because aging mentally doesn't depend on time, it depends on experience. So you could exponentially increase that with putting yourself in situations that you've never been into, so you can learn more. You know, you could travel more, you can see be a part of so many different groups, so many different activities that would give you a different perspective. That would help your mental aging. That would help you be exposed to so many different things that would make you wiser and would allow you to see from different lenses, because it's all about perspective
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, and the wisdom of it and the amount of knowledge that you have.
Do you think that time and age are just constructs? Do you think those are just like, what do you think of when you think of like time or age? Like if I tell you I'm 27 years old, what does that mean to you? Does that mean I now only have a limited amount of life left? Does that mean I only have a limited amount of knowledge? Like what does it mean when I put a title on my age?
Yeah, so I mean, there's two ways to think of it. There's like the real way and reality, and there's the philosophical or hypothetical way. You know, I think like these are the two perspectives that comes to mind, because the real way, the real world way, I would be like, yeah, you're still 20, you have so much you have so much to experience, you have so many different things that could happen, your life could change at any given moment, and we've seen, you know, life changes in literally a second. I mean, life ends in less than a second. You could be driving and, you know, your life ends, or you get in an accident, become paralyzed or whatever. So the idea, we tend, when we say, oh, you're still young, you got so much to experience, we're just assuming that all the other factors of life are just constant.
Mhm.
We're not factoring those things. However, I mean, the location could differ, the amount of opportunities presented could differ, and these are all different factors that comes down with it. And in a society like America, or living in the United States, being young, it's okay. It's actually, you have so many opportunities being young in America, because you can still have an impact and have a voice and have so many different things going for you at that age. While in different societies, there are certain things that you can't get to until you build your career and you are already older, so people can even listen to you. So us being here, that the age becomes not that much of a factor. I don't know if I
Yeah.
went off track with this
No.
answer. It's just like I'm exploring different, like I'm answering this while thinking about it, exploring
Yeah.
different factors that really
And I guess, I'm
and
sorry, go
age
ahead.
time and age could not, it's important. There's a relation between it, but it depends on which way you're looking at it and which perspective. Because you could be really, I mean, I was thinking about this when you guys asked on the group chat that we're talking about aging. I was like, well, let's take entrepreneurship as an example. And being an entrepreneur, it would take you, let's say, 10 to 15 years to build your first company until you get it off the ground. And maybe a lot of the entrepreneurs I listen to and talk to, they always say, like, at some point your company hits a plateau and you stop being the owner of the company, you become a worker for the company. So then when entrepreneurs tend to find an exit strategy and leave their company and start their new venture. But what ends up happening is they start the new venture or the new business, and they get off to the ground in like 3 to 5 years. And it becomes even bigger from their big first venture. That took them 10 to 15 years. And that's because the mental age, all the experience, all the knowledge they acquired in the past 10, 15 years. And on top of that, the emotion, the humanity skills, communication skills, discipline, and all the other stuff that takes you to entrepreneur, they got it honed down and tuned in a way where they can apply it to exponentially progress in whatever they do. So it really, even it would seem like it took them 3 to 5 years to build the second company. It actually took them the 15 years, the first 15 years, that they compacted all that information and knowledge and skills into those 3 to 5 years, because they already have it and they already went through it. So that's where the mental age comes in way more than the physical age. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot I was interested in hearing there, because like when you ask the question, what is age, right? You know, you can think of it as like a biological aging process, or like, you know, the fermentation of experiences that you digest and then inoculate into your behavior, right? That then become habits that then like allow you to set new trajectories, right? Exponentially, like you're saying. And I wanted to actually tell a story based on what you said. So there was a girl one time in a cafe, right? And she sees Pablo Picasso, right? The famous artist, right? And so she goes up to him and she's like, "Oh, I'm a huge fan. Can you like just scribble something on this napkin for me?" Right? And she's like, and he's like, "Yeah, sure." And 30 seconds later, scribbles something off, signs his name, and she's like, "Oh, awesome. Can I have that?" And he's like, "Well, that's going to be 50,000." And she's like, "What? It took you 30 seconds to doodle something on a napkin?" And he goes, "No, it took me 30 years to get here to do this." Right? And that's why
Exactly.
it costs the time, right? And it's not the amount of time I'm working on it, it's all the experiences I've accumulated to get to this state, right? And like I mean, that's exactly it, right? And
Exactly.
and I totally agree. Like accumulate, it made me think too, like they take 15 years to start that first company, and then 5 years to exit that second company, and like all the experiences accumulated, right? And of course, like I wanted to add, like they're plugged into a network where they can also like leverage, but all that experience is all it all to have that network, they needed to accumulate those experiences of 15
And tapping
years.
into a network is not easy. So
No,
it took
it
them
takes-
those
takes
15
time.
years to build a good network to allow
Mhm.
them to this. So it's really a weird concept that also makes sense how the top 1% just makes more than the rest of the 90%, 99% combined. It's because of those things. I mean, plus the corruption, sometimes not. It depends on
You know
what
what I would
factors.
say, really, I mean, it's compounding interest off of those experiences had, you know,
And leverage.
and right. I mean, and if you can compound and continue the momentum of the experiences you had, you know, and leverage it, like you said, you know what I
Mhm.
mean, then you could launch, you know, your own trajectory, whatever you want to do, right? I mean, you become the masters of the universe because you can
Right.
decide what your reality to be. Yeah, I find
That's
it's really interesting that this conversation went more into like mental philosophy of what it means to age and to mature versus, because originally I was thinking, right, like we would talk about the biological processes of aging and like, can we combat aging, right? Because you said like, you know, we won't ever be able to stop aging. And I might push back against that because there's some interesting research that has just come out and that's been coming
Oh,
out
yeah.
about this new theory of information, and it's the information theory of aging, right? So it's pretty
Mhm.
much talking about as you age, your epigenetic information, right, or the information that is exchanged from your genome to your environment, right, or to your cellular microenvironment, which is like the epigenome, it becomes
yeah.
skewed or scratched, and then the cells function less efficiently, and over time they become, you know, senescent cells, and then that accumulation of senescent cells that just don't do anything lead to like, you know, heart failure, right, or lead to, you know, metabolic syndrome, or lead to these like big diseases like cancer or Alzheimer's, you know, like that we say, well, these diseases kill you, right?
Yep.
But it's like, and we try to like separate the differences, like, oh, well, heart failure is due to cardiovascular disease, or Alzheimer's due to a neurological disorder, right? And like, we think of them in separate categories, but really there's a fundamental physical process that the cells undergo to and propagate this information to cause these disorders 20 years down the line, right? And so like,
Yeah.
you know, I asked the question, you know, like, you know, why is it humans only live to what the median like 75 years, you know?
Well, back then it wasn't like that. So like the
We
idea
live
of
shorter
aging.
life, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, there are two ways of to look at it. I'm not sure if I'm correct to this information. I gotta check it. It's like way before, like, I mean, let's say the start of humanity, when Adam and Eve went down. They say like they lived hundreds of years. That's how they were able to build communities, and the humans started. And then the aging started decreasing. That's, I think, we're at a low age average, and then now we're starting to bring it back up with technology and healthcare. So
Interesting.
that's how I understood
So-
it. I could be wrong. I definitely
Mm.
have to make sure and fact check this. But I remember, like, I've learned that at the beginning of times, people were like would live for hundreds of years.
Do you
Interesting.
think that we can combat nature?
Well, so that's a great question. So like there's a physical phenomenon that is entropy, right? That all information or all ordered systems tend towards disorder over time, right? Like all things tend towards disorder, but like life is actually like, I think of like kind of an eddy against that phenomenon of entropy, where it actually creates ordered systems and then has found a way to bypass that law in a way where like you can fight the tendency towards disorder with like, you know, how life evolves over time, like where we started as just small ordered systems of, you know, molecular structures or species that then became like cells, right? And then those cells became multicellular, and then those multicellular things became, you know, complex organisms, and it propagated up to where we are now, with where we have complex organisms that have created complex societies that like allows for like endurance or perseverance through entropy, right? And of course, there's like catastrophic events that still can occur that right, that leads to extinction, right? But like so far over the last 4 billion years, life went from a pool of, you know, organic material to, you know, what we see now, right? So like it's reordering itself to be anti-fragile, right, against entropy, right? And we talked about that last week a little bit, like where a lot of people think the opposite of fragility is resilience, but that's like fragility is like the nature of something breaking, right, or being fragile, whereas like resilience is like an object not wanting to be fragile, but really that's not the opposite, right, of fragility. It's anti-fragility. When there's some energy that's applied to a system, right, that would tend to break or cause disorder of other systems, it actually makes that system stronger, right, more anti-fragile, right? And that's kind of like what evolution or even just like fitness to an environment is, where you have to, where you see some adversities happen and it actually increase the strength of the system, right? Increase the fitness of the system. That's kind of the idea between like pushing against, friction in a sense, like going to work out, right? Or like fasting or like cold plunges or saunas, like these things that are difficult for our systems to do actually combat aging, actually allow us to be healthier by doing things that are difficult, right? And that goes to like experiences of mental aging and like mental resiliency and mental anti-fragility is like putting yourself in experiences that are really difficult and then overcoming that experiences gives you, the sense of maturity, right? Mental maturity.
Absolutely.
Is there like a limit that we can put on it?
Well, I don't know, because like there's whales that live hundreds of years, over 200 years, like, and they're only 40 million years separated from us humans genetically, right? So like there isn't aside from like a tragedy happening, right? I mean, there's not any reason to see why we can't design systems that are anti-fragile, right? And
yeah, I'm a big believer that, our bodies are created in a way where they can fix themselves if you give them the right nutritions and the right amount of like nutritions, or you give them the right habits and give them the right environment to live. There's, in a way, they shouldn't go bad, or they can even grow. Like if some cells die, then the others grow. You can keep always growing more cells. So if we just give them the right environment to live longer and understand what's that and understand why they go bad. I mean, we go back to our 3D bioprinting, understanding that the cell viability and structure.
Mm-hmm.
One of the main things is we can create a structure, but we can't create the right vessels and the vessels to deliver the nutrient, deliver the oxygen, deliver what it needs to keep it alive for a longer time. I mean, we're able to make them live for 28 days or sometimes 60 days, but then things start not working as well. And I mean, that's kind of the process of aging. You got to understand how can we create the correct environment for those cells to keep living. And then you talk about how about we can just artificially make another organ. Then if you lose a kidney, we give you another one.
Right.
I mean,
that's the fascinating thing that with some of these breakthroughs, right? So this idea of the information theory of aging talks about, and it's very specific, right? We can get into like, we could have a little biology lesson if you guys are interested.
Let's hear it.
All right. So you have your cell, right? And the cell has a plasma membrane that like encapsulates everything. And then inside the cell, right, is what's called a cytosol, right? That's just like filled with different organelles, different processors that keep the factory of the cell running, right? And then there's this nuclear pore, which contains all your DNA, right? And all the proteins and processing machinery that translate, right, genetic information to protein machinery, right? And so do you guys know how long the length of the DNA is inside one of those cells, inside the nucleus of one cell?
Yes. I just heard it last week. Isn't it like 2 meters?
These tiny little cells that you can't even really see with the eye, right? That you have to look through a microscope. Inside that is packed full of this DNA, and yeah, it's 6 feet long. It's 2 meters. So in one cell, and there's trillions of cells in your body, right? So if you added up all the DNA, right, in your body, it could go from here, from the Earth to the moon back 8 times, right? That's
Yeah.
all this material is packed inside these cells, right? This is genetic material, right? And
And we can't see it.
you can't even right, you can't really see it, but like it's not just like, obviously it's ordered very specifically, right? So the DNA is wrapped around these things called histones, right? Proteins, structural proteins that hold the DNA, and these histones are ordered in a specific compact way to make chromosomes, right? We've heard about chromosomes, right? And you can almost see those through a microscope, right? And so when the cell needs to produce more proteins, there's a signal that goes into the nuclear pore, and it signals the unraveling of the histones of the chromosome, and then the histones, and then it orders these transcription factors, these little protein machineries on the DNA to like produce, right, RNA that then produces this proteins that are interested. And so every time something signals this unraveling of the histones, unraveling the DNA so it can make more proteins, it actually like causes it to become slightly more efficient each time it unravels and ravels up again, unravels and ravels up again. And it's actually, so David Sinclair named the protein that signals this unraveling. It's called SIR2, SIR2, which is I can't remember what it stands for. Information regulator, right? So I can't remember what the S stands for, but I could look it up. But yeah, so every time this does this, and it can only do it so many times before, right? It starts having misinformation that's sent out from the genome to the proteins, and right. So it's this unraveling process that causes shifts in signaling, right, which is almost information exchange from the genome to the protein and to the microenvironment. So like as we age, it's really the as they call, like the scratching of a CD, right? Like where you have you scratch a CD, right, and then you can't listen to songs or kind of like spots, you know. So over
It
time, you
cuts
have
off.
more and more scratching of these histones, right, or the information exchange, right, becomes scratched, and over time you
Yeah.
can't. It's not viable anymore, and then it starts creating all these random proteins that aren't necessarily needed for a specific cell, right? There's all these different types of cells, and they all do very specific things. And so
Yeah.
as this happens, the cell becomes X, what do they call it? X differentiated, right? So it becomes like just a general cell because it's creating all these proteins it shouldn't be, and that's what causes eventually like the clogging, if you want to say, of the organ, right, the tissue, and then eventually the tissue
And that's
eventually the heart system, you know, cardiovascular.
and that's basically you saying that's why the efficiency of cells reduces and could cause diseases or organ failures, and that's basically aging.
Yeah, or like 28 days. You said you could only culture these cells for 28 days, right? Over those 28 days, it's losing this efficiency or this scratching, the decreased efficiency of precise information exchange from the genome to the environment, then signals the cell saying, okay, you're doing the wrong thing, kill yourself, right? And that's apoptosis, right? So it starts to kill itself, and it can't divide anymore, right? It can't do what you're wanting to do. So then they die, right? They're not viable anymore. And that's the whole process. But if you could, in some way, reduce or extend the amount of times those histones curl, you know, unfold and then fold together, right? Then you can circumnavigate, or you can avoid these diseases that accumulate over 20 years, right? 20 to 40 years, from 30 to 80. So like if you can, then you can extend your life. And there's like mouse studies that are shown like by signaling, they've done certain things, and we can get into that in a second, like how to manipulate this signaling pathway to extend the life of mice by 100%, right? So that's doubling their age, right? So that's like us humans living until 150, 170. You know, it's wild,
Yeah.
and so that's a possibility. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts?
Well, okay, Cameron, go ahead.
I was gonna say, don't our cells regenerate like every, or it's every 7 years? Our body is basically brand new because your body creates a whole new set of cells within a 7-year time span.
I don't know the exact numbers. Hey, did you look it up? Is that what you found?
No, that's what I've heard. It's like,
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure of the exact numbers. I know that our cells do regenerate, but if you have a cell that can't even sustain itself, it won't regenerate the right way. So I think that would be the reason. Like you have some kind of
the question is, if our cells regenerate every 7 years and we get a whole new set of them, then how can you say that we age? Because we're brand new every 7 years.
yes, but well, we need Rourke for that. But from my understanding, those dead cells, they don't go anywhere. They just sit there.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, part of aging. Rourke,
Did you hear that
we have a
question?
question
Rourke?
for you.
Yeah, sorry, I had to plug my computer in. Go ahead. What was the question?
So the question is, go ahead, Cameron. So
So every 7 or so years, our cells, we get a whole new set of cells. Like, so we're basically a brand new person roughly every 7 years. So if that's true, how can you say that we age? I'll let you answer that, and then I'm gonna go get some food.
All right. Well, that's really interesting. So like your cells divide, right? So like when they say all your cells replace themselves, like that's just like a kind of a blanket statement. Like your skin cells replace themselves, every like 4 weeks, right? You never replace your neurons. Your brain cells are not replaced, right? So that's kind of the idea that you kind of feel the same throughout your whole life because your brain cells aren't replaced. So, I mean, some of the peripheral tissue can be, but there's I can't remember. That reminds me of this this analogy, or I can't remember what it would be called. But so there's this old town in Rome, right? And this guy is a shipbuilder, right? So he repairs ships, and he has a ship, newly built ship, names it Odysseus, right? And there's this oracle that comes and asks and say, "Oh, this is a really nice ship, how long did it take you to make it?" And he's like, 5 weeks. He's like, okay, interesting. So she'd come back, every 5 years, and every year he'd have to replace, a sail or replace a board or replace a nail, right? And after 5, 10, 15 years, he ended up having replaced every part of that ship, even though it looked identical, same, even though its name was still Odysseus, right? Every part of the ship had been replaced, and the oracle came back and said, is this ship the same ship that you started with? Is it still this thing? And that's kind of like what I think about in terms of us. Like, are we, even though our cells are, being, replaced, and then apoptosis happens. So like our cells are replaced every 7 years. Like, are we the same person 7 years later? Are you still Cameron or Ali after those 7 years?
I mean, don't they hold the same genetic information than newer ones?
Right. Yeah. Well,
so that's why it's
much
identical.
Right.
So
I think we're
not really. So that's the thing. It's like, okay, it splits. When it splits, there is some misinformation that occurs from the split. So they're not identical, right?
Identical.
They're nearly identical, and they do pretty much the same thing. And then over, right, so many mitotic splits, it becomes either senescent or it becomes
definitely
cancerous, right? If it's
Cancerous,
cancer, it's
yeah.
immortal. Or then eventually kills itself, right? Or the system
I have one more
recycles
question
material.
then, and we can end with that. What do you think of nordotropic or nordotropin? Let me.
Yeah.
So that's basically like growth hormone.
there's a lot of different like nopotropes or whatever they're called.
Yep. I know that a lot of older people use it. They use growth hormone to make them look less old. They say, oh, it makes me feel better. It makes me feel like young again. It makes me feel like I'm in my 30s again, and like their skin start feeling a lot better. And I just want to know how. I mean, they use growth hormone pens basically. And another one was I forgot what is it called. It's like the blood. I don't know if it's called blood doping.
Like replacing your blood with a younger batch of blood.
Yes.
Yeah, those are two common techniques, but well, I don't know about growth hormone really. But honestly, so there's research coming out and that we don't have time, I don't think, to get into
no, we
the
don't.
metabolic pathways that I was talking about earlier. But there's ways to behaviorally modify and improve your cellular health, right, by tagging into these molecular pathways. And one of them is actually fasting. So fasting makes your body go through I forget, it's autosis, right? Or aphagy, where like essentially like it doesn't have the food it needs. So it accumulates all the storage and the parts of the cell that are redundant, and it consumes that material and recycles it. So it becomes more efficient. It cleans it up. And so that's why you see it in a lot of cultures, right? And like religions, that like you see people that regularly fast tend to have healthier, longer lives, right? As long as like that's one, you have to have generally a lot of other things, but that practice tends to extend the quality of health span for longer durations, right? And there's a specific metabolic reason or molecular signaling pathway that why fasting does improve the longevity and health span of your life. It also like cold exposure is another one, and as well as like sauna, like heat exposure.
I think this topic will need a second part for sure. We're coming up to time right now, so
all right, well boys, that was another great episode. We hit on everything from mental aging, spiritual aging, physiological aging, some of the metabolic pathways, or
we need to get into the biology part.
Right. I mean, and that's what I was thinking about going with, because we're talking about biotech stuff. But no, I think it was great. We talked about, we kind of like explored some philosophy of what it means to age, and I think it was good. So, gentlemen, once again, thank you for hanging out. You know, Ali, Cameron, beautiful. All right. Well, I'll see you. I'll see
Peace
you
out.
next time.
At IMI, we're developing a wearable device that continuously monitors thyroid hormones. Patients